Hello everyone, welcome to Newcastle Fans TV. So I've got the Mac as I'm on the move. Little Ferdinand is with us here, aren't you? On here. Good boy. Good boy. You might see him come behind us in a minute. But we're going to talk about the negativity with the media. And it's not just one individual journalist, but one journalist is pushing heavily. So he's going to focus quite a lot in this. It has to stop. It's got to stop. Yeah, hello everyone, let's get cracking then, shall we? So I've got the Mac because I want to show you some videos on this. So I'll take you back to when, obviously, the transfer window shut. We all said that the transfer window was an absolute joke, right? 99% of Newcastle fans agreed with that. Paul Mitchell then did an open written press, asked me what he wanted about one of it, and Paul Mitchell said that the transfer policy at Newcastle wasn't fit for purpose. Media have stirred that a little bit, saying basically, you've got negative bias. Eddie Howe, what do you think of your signings? And obviously Eddie Howe was asked about that at the press conference, and it went. This has gone on for a few weeks now, and it's just it's boring, man. It's boring negativity, and you come across as very negative and a poor journalist when you keep bringing shit up like this, especially when Newcastle are third in the league. But I'm going to show you a few clips. I'm going to take you back. And these are all on audio because we don't have permission to use video. So this is the press conference where he was asked publicly about it.
In Paul's interview last week, he was very complimentary about you in terms of the coaching and the job you've done. Instead, he was looking forward to building a good relationship with you. He also said the transfer strategy he walked into wasn't fit for purpose. You were a big part of that transfer strategy. What did you make of those comments, and do you agree? Was it not fit for purpose?
I think a few things on that. I think very, very proud of every single player that we signed in that period. I think it's very easy to look back at any transfer window and sort of make a judgment on the players that you've signed 3 years down the line. But you have to go back to actually the situation we're in when we're in those moments where you're in the relegation zone and you're trying to recruit players. That's not an easy thing to do. But you're also recruiting not just for the short term, but for the long term. And I think when you look back, I think that work was good because our objective was to stay in the league. So I'm not going to critique every signing, but I'm very, very proud of the body of work that we did and the players that we have now from the legacy of those transfer windows, and we love them to bits. When you're in that moment, the decisions that you made, and I think everyone can hold their heads up very high.
Paul also said that you only played a supporting role this summer, which would give the impression that it was you and others still sort of leading the transfer process. Was that the case?
I don't think it's right for me to sort of make individual comments in reply to Paul's press conference. I don't think that's going to help our current situation. So I think it's best for me to focus on the future.
And just lastly, have you spoken to Paul since last week?
No, I've had no contact from Paul, but I don't think that's unusual. We're got different jobs to do. I'm focusing on the football and the team, and he's obviously focusing on his role.
Now, for me, I have no problems with that as a fan. I've got no problem with it that, because it was quite a big thing at the moment, you look and think, Paul Mitchell said it's not fit for purpose. However, it's been massively turned on its head because Simon Jordan has it spot on to a T. I'll play the clip in a minute. But what Paul Mitchell is referring to is Newcastle have been taken over, and then they went not crazy, but they spent a lot of money without trading. We've only really sold saint-maximin and Chris Wood before we had to in June because we had spent so much money, because the rules and the restrictions were in place with FFP, PSR. Newcastle can't do as Chelsea or Manchester City because the rules are there. So we had to sell Elliot Anderson and Yakuba Minter, who would still be at Newcastle this summer if the rules weren't there. But have a listen to this.
As much as we're trying, as much as the media are trying to create as much division between Newcastle's management, whether it be Eddie Howe and Paul Mitchell, as they possibly can, the team on the field is winning games. It's deliberate misinterpretation from the media on characterising what Paul Mitchell said. Under the governance of football, in order for Newcastle to be able to refresh and re-energise their team, they need to have a transfer policy that enables them to move players in and out to be able to do what they need to do, which is give Newcastle the opportunity to progress. That's the point he's making. And what's being suggested is that he's criticising Eddie Howe. Not doing that at all. He's saying what's not fit for purpose is, in order for Newcastle to progress the way that people perceive they would with a buying policy, they had to buy players and sell players
Why
better.
doesn't then Eddie Howe react in that manner? Why does he then respond as if he is being criticised?
Because he's pushing back against the characterisation that the media are framing it in, which is basically Paul Mitchell is criticising him.
Why are
He's
they
not criticising.
Why are they
And
airing
also
their
what
dirty washing in public?
and what
These conversations should be taking place internally.
Well, he can't with the media, because ultimately, if you're asked a question,
You can
about
ignore the
why-
question, no?
No, hold on. Well, of course you can.
I think he'd be the best place to have done
and then
that.
you can be critical of the reasons why the club isn't communicative. So if Newcastle, the challenge for Newcastle is that everyone thinks they're the world's richest football club, and why aren't they buying their way to success? And the reality of it is they can't. So now what you've got is a new director of football coming in and saying, in part, the reasons why I can't do what I really would like to do is because the previous buying policies, which were right at the time for what we needed to fix at the time, aren't proving to be right in the here and now, because we can't trade the way we want to now. Now, that's not a criticism. Now, what Eddie's doing is going, OK, I'm not going to have these players criticised, because he's taking it down to a micro level and thinking that the players in the dressing room you've still got to manage are being in part criticised. No, they're not.
So Mitchell's basically saying, point your guns at Eddie and not me.
Mitchell's not saying point your guns at anyone.
No, he's you in the building.
He's giving you an answer to the question.
He needs to take time for us to trust him.
What we're doing is characterising the question as attributing blame. Paul Bugger can't answer a question. He gives you an answer to a question, and then we characterise it as some sort of division between people.
Now, obviously, going back to Eddie's defended his signings, because Eddie's obviously going to back the players that he's bought. Which if you look at the record that Eddie Howe, the majority of the players that he's brought in have all been fantastic. The majority of them, even people who aren't even playing, like Matty Targett at the time when he come in on loan, he was fantastic. So you've got to say that. But as I say, that Simon Jordan has a spot on, because he believes with me that the media are stirring it in particular. And I do want to highlight one journalist in particular, which is Craig Hope. Now, I'm not having to go just at Craig. There is one or two other media outlets, but Craig seems to be pushing this really heavily. I'm going to bring up his Twitter timeline, because if we go through his Twitter at the moment, it's incredibly negative and very much focused, a lot of it, on Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe. Some of the replies have not been pleasant from Newcastle fans, in all honesty. I just think they're sick of it. I just think they're sick of someone bringing negativity up when Newcastle are actually getting results. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to be critical of the performances, I've got no problems with that. I've done that on the channel this season. So's Sam, so's Johnny, so's Carl, so's Harry on the last Wolves. We've all been critical of performances. No problems critical of what is factual and truth. You don't know if Eddie Howe and Paul Mitchell have had a big fallout. Even if they have, surely it happens on a regular basis, even at your average day at work. You bang your head to the ground and get on with it. Do you know what I mean? For the greater good. Football has fallout. Do you know what I mean? But just looking at this timeline, to constant. I feel like Carol Vorderman. I'll have a continent, please, Carol. But it's just like, stop it. What's the agenda here? What is the agenda? Do you want to try and get a scoop that you were the first there? For me, it's just, I just didn't like it. And the conversation, I want to go back to Talk Sport as well. The conversation goes on about why they're playing out in public, why Paul Mitchell did the interview, and why Eddie Howe playing out in public. Well, he's getting asked the question. Have a look at this. This is quite long, this one.
But they're speaking through the press, though, aren't they?
Well, are they? Or are
they are.
Well,
so
the local press.
You own Newcastle Football Club now.
Yes.
What would you be doing today? You'd be saying, "Come on, guys, I don't want this being aired publicly. Have your conversations internally."
You're asking me again,
Eddie, come on, adjust now. We've got somebody else.
Well, you're seeing my response.
You're looking at Brighton Football Club, and you're saying they're one of the best run in the country.
Seeing my response.
The manager doesn't decide who comes through the door.
But you're seeing my response. You just asked me a question. My response has already superseded that, because if I was the owner of Newcastle, my response would be the same response I've just given you, which is, this is you, media, characterising two individuals inside a business.
The media are going to be the media.
And
we have to handle it better internally.
Martin, I'd be privy to what was the relationship between my two colleagues, so I wouldn't need to have the conversation.
It don't sound very aligned to me when Eddie's saying that before the Wolves game.
No, because the question is being asked of him in such a way. And what he's doing is defending the particular area that he thinks is of concern and doesn't want any further division.
Yeah, but if he'd spoken to Paul Mitchell before that interview, before the Wolves game, he'd have said, no, I know what Paul said, and he didn't mean it like that. Just so as you know, Paul and I have spoken about this. We're on the same page.
Well, maybe that...
Now, let me talk to you about my team for Wolves.
And maybe that's right. And maybe there would have been benefits in the fact that those two guys might have communicated, and maybe they did, and maybe they didn't want to share that information with us in the media.
Thank God for that.
No, but there is a process that you work towards, and the whole process isn't about what satisfies
this Paul Mitchell comes in off the street. Hold on. If he's just come in, he's like a blow-in. He's come in and telling everybody what he's going to do. No, we fought to take this club out of relegation up to the top four.
He didn't say that.
And you talk like that?
He didn't say that.
That's how it's his reaction.
That's how you've chosen to interpret it.
That's how Eddie's taken to interpret interpret it.
That's how he's choosing to interpret
No,
it.
Eddie has
via
taken
the media.
that way.
If your transfer policy...
He stood up for those players.
If your transfer
I justify every signing I've made.
But that's a different argument. And that's
That's
not a
the
problem.
argument he's making.
No, the argument is about transfer policies and who's more effective in it. And the reasons why Newcastle can't buy is because their previous transfer policies have led them to a position where they can't buy now.
Overspend.
Okay,
Unarguable.
So there you go. You can see that Simon Jordan's... So no, he wasn't. I know he wasn't. He's going against Martin Keown. I have to applaud Simon Jordan once again. And I think this is the biggest praise he'll ever get because he has it absolutely nailed on. The media are shit-stirring. They're making something up that isn't there. The twisting what Paul Mitchell has said. They're trying to get bites from Eddie Howe. Just stop it, man. Just stop it. It makes you look like a right fucking dick, to be honest with you. Newcastle clearly have money. We know that. We went for Mark Gahey, and you're probably pointing the finger at maybe two things, maybe because Eddie Howe hasn't been backed and got his man. Maybe there wasn't enough money to go over the threshold. Who knows? We can speculate. But then again, should we have had another option? Eddie really should have had number 2 instead? Mark Gahey wasn't signed, but he was adamant he wanted Mark Gahey. We didn't get him. Will it come back and haunt Newcastle? Hopefully not. Obviously, we know that there's money there for January, so we can go and spend the money. So no doubt Eddie Howe will be knocking on Paul Mitchell's door and saying, right, come on, gotta get me my man. If it's not Mark Gahey, his transfer fees will come down, because he's only have 18 months left in January. So if it's him or another player, I think you've got to look at options. So maybe you've got to look at both. But Paul Mitchell, once again, was referring back to not fit for purpose, was basically because Newcastle was spending and not trading. And then we hit the threshold where we can't spend anymore. But it's been shit-stirred and turned into something else. But mental, man. So fast forward a week, you're thinking, right, press conference, it's all going to be about like the performance and the goal of Harvey Barnes and Tonali coming on, and yes, all of that was discussed, but yet again, Paul Mitchell was brought up. And to be fair, it wasn't Craig Hope this time, it was actually Mark Douglas. And then Craig Hope asks exactly the same question what Mark Douglas does. Have a look at this.
Following on from last week, has there been any contact between you and Paul this week, or is it something that you've just kind of forgotten about really this week?
I'm not going to, go into every week in terms of our contact, but collaboration, as I've said last week, is what we're looking to do to take the club forward.
Have you spoken to Paul this week?
I think I just answered that one, Craig.
I'm
not going to go there.
You're not going to go there?
No.
Would it be good, beneficial if you and others, him, whoever at the club, did sit down and have a conversation and address some of the sort of concerns there's been?
Yeah, I mean, just so people know, I've had conversations with senior members of the board this week, so I'm in regular communication with them. And as I said, trying to collaborate, trying to work together for the benefit of the club always. And that's always in my heart, and that will always be while I'm manager of the club.
Clearly trying to get a bite, he wasn't listening, because Mark Douglas asked the question, and the same question's asked yet again. Eddie Howe, you can clearly tell by the tone of his voice, is pissed off with it. It needs to stop. It's boring for me as a fan. And yes, I'm using a platform like NFTV to express it, which probably get out bigger than the average fan. But this bullshit needs to stop. It's negative crap that isn't really a story now. The transfer window's shut. If Newcastle don't spend in January, ask the questions again. But when you're stirring it and trying to push something, you're getting Toon fans criticising you constantly, and you're meant to be a Toon journalist. And again, if this goes out to some other media outlets as well, it's died off, but one journalist, as I say, is keep pushing it. For me, it has to stop. It's got to stop, because I'm sick of it as a fan. I've had to make a video, but I didn't really want to come out and criticise anybody, because it's not something we normally do on the channel. But for me, I think this is warranted. I really do. I just think there's agenda there. We've already seen with Steve Bruce in the past that Steve Bruce has bit back in the past, and it kind of like I'm starting to question myself, thinking, well, wait a minute, is Bruce got a point here? But anyway, that's it from me. But let me know how you feel about everything that I said. But I'm not going to back down from this. Simon Jordan is absolutely spot on what he says today.